Hello, everyone, and welcome to our choice event. My name is Florian. I am the communication lead at the Climate Choice, and I'm happy to welcome you to our 47th episode of our series. We organize the choice events in order to inform you every second Thursday during the lunch break about best practice solutions for your climate transformation. As some people are still joining, I will start slowly and first introduce you to how we'll be organizing this choice event. First of all, you should know that we are recording this webinar. This way, you will be able to watch the presentation again afterwards on YouTube. We use the webinar function of Zoom, which means that you can see me and Kanishk later on, our speaker, but we cannot see you. In order to still have interaction with you, there are two ways to communicate with us. The easiest way is to post a question or a comment here in the chat window, and also to vote up the questions or comments of others with a like. And right now, I would like to invite you to test the chat window below by just writing hello and telling us from where you are currently joining the webinar. So, for example, I would say, hello, I'm Florian, I'm joining from Germany near Braunschweig. Very good. First ones are already writing, so I'll wait until some more writing. Very good. Hello, Tanja from Kaltenkirchen, and hello, Martin from St. Gallen. Very good. Also from India, Palm Beach. Okay, very international audience today. Thanks a lot for being here. So we use this chat tool also to collect your questions during the presentation so that our expert can then answer them at the end of the webinar in a final Q&A round. And the second feature that you can use is our Slack group. You have all been invited to this group by email in advance. And here you also have the chance to ask questions to the speaker or just to connect afterwards. So today we will have an exclusive insight from a major global enterprise, Schneider Electric, and we will learn how they approach the challenge of Scope 3 decarbonization. This is a big problem at the moment for companies trying to meet the demands of stakeholders to drastically reduce CO2 emissions. Because typically, 90% or more of enterprises' emissions occur in their supply chains. And the scale of those supply chains makes it very hard to engage with suppliers in order to obtain missing climate-related risk and emissions data. And additionally, suppliers often lack the knowledge and training on how to manage the reduction of their emissions. We at the Climate Choice are actually also working on solving this specific problem. And to do that, we have built an end-to-end software platform that enables companies to streamline data acquisition and support suppliers in their decarbonization journey. Our climate intelligence platform helps suppliers in a data-driven way to understand where they currently stand in their climate transformation, how they compare to others, and what they can do to improve. And if you want to get to know our platform and our approach a bit more, there's a very easy first step. You can sign up for free by clicking the link that my colleague Anya is now about to post in the comment section. And just take 5 minutes of your time to fill in the registration form and get basic access to the platform. Thank you, Anya, for posting the link. You can also just check it out later. So now back to our topic of today, the approach of Schneider Electric. In a few moments, Kanishk Negi will share his insights with us on this topic. But to give him first an impression of who is with us today, we have prepared a survey and 2 questions that I now want to share with you. So the first question that you can now see is about the stage of Scope 3 decarbonization in your company. So you can just click one of the answers and tell us if you have already, if you've not started yet, if you're in the early stages of execution and in the advanced stage of execution, or if you just don't know. So the first answer is already coming in. Very good. Thanks for that already. I will give you 3 more seconds and then I will close the survey. Okay. And now you should be able to see the results. And yeah, it's actually very evenly distributed. The most people are actually in the early stages of execution with 33%, but all the other stages are also well represented today. Okay. And the second survey is about the challenges that you're facing when looking at scope 3. So what is your experience? Do you think the biggest challenge is to obtaining and managing climate relevant data from the suppliers? Is it to engage the suppliers in climate actions? Is it the technical know-how of telling the suppliers how to improve? Is it all of the above? Or is there actually something else that we haven't written down that you cannot find that is also still challenging? So again, very good response rate already. And I will give you again 3 more seconds until I will close the survey. Last chance. Okay. And we can see most people are actually saying it's all of the above. But from the specific answers, the obtaining and managing of climate relevant data has been picked most. So, wait a minute. Okay, I think now we can also see it. I'm sorry. Okay, and I think this is very interesting as a start, also for Kanishk. And I am now asking you to join us on stage and to turn on your camera. Hello, Kanishk.
Hello, Florian. Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our colleagues who've joined us in this discussion today on how Schneider Electric is reducing the scope 3 emissions from our supply base. Florian mentioned decarbonizing scope 3, engaging suppliers is one of the challenging aspects of the decarbonization journey when we compare it with the scope 1 and 2, which is in-house within our own control. I'm extremely happy to share with you the experiences and the lessons that we've learned on this topic since we started working on this initiative. My name is Kanishk Negi, and I work as the Director for Sustainable Procurement for Schneider Electric. Now, before we jump into the topic, a very brief intro about Schneider Electric for some of us who are not very familiar with the organization. So Schneider Electric is a leading organization which focuses on the digitalization of energy management and automation. As of end of 2021, the company had the revenues of 21 billion euros and was powered by more than 128,000 employees spread across 115 countries, or more than 115 countries. And if you look at the procurement spend of Schneider Electric, as of the end of last year, it was around 14 billion euros globally. Now, Schneider Electric also has a fairly balanced presence around the world. So if you look at the graph or the chart on the right-hand side, you will see the breakup of our revenue coming from different parts of the world. Now, on one side, while it's a good thing to have a fairly balanced footprint, it also reflects, or it also means that we will have suppliers almost evenly distributed in all parts of the world. And that adds to the complexity, that adds to the challenge when we are managing and operating a global supply chain. Now, in addition to focusing on the commercial success and the business objectives, business performance, as an impact company, Schneider Electric also focuses on how these business performances are achieved. And that means we do take a 360-degree review of how our performance is impacting our stakeholders, going beyond our financial performance, how are the environmental impact, the social impact of our operations, of our supply chains getting measured, getting monitored, and also how and what kind of operating culture within the organization are we creating. And to make sure that we are focusing on these topics in a structured manner, the organization is guided by 6 long-term commitments, which focus on climate action, resource efficiency, trust, inclusiveness, equality, and engaging and empowering local communities. But often, it's important to note that these big commitments, these long-term commitments, should not be very abstract or something which is not monitored, tracked, or we are able to quantify. And to make sure that we are holding ourselves to a higher degree of accountability, we committed ourselves to these 12 specific, measurable, and time-bound commitments on these 6 thematic areas. And if you look at these 12 thematic areas or 12 commitments as we have, it's called 11 plus 1 because 11 commitments are global and 1 is a local commitment which is taken by every country or every zone. So if you look at these 12 commitments, 1/3 of these commitments are coming directly from procurement, which goes on to show the significant impact the procurement organization, the upstream supply chain, has on the overall sustainability impact of the organization. And one of these 4 commitments, which are coming from procurement or upstream supply chain, is reducing the carbon emissions from our top 1,000 suppliers operations, which is scope 1 and scope 2, by 50% by 2025. So this is a key commitment which we are driving since the beginning of 2021. We started working on the groundwork from 2020. And today we're going to share with you how and what lessons have we learned as we moved ahead on this journey. But before we jump into that, one question. Procurement organization traditionally is not the one where you will find sustainability as a key focus area. So how do we drive sustainability within procurement organization? And given the fact we have a globally spread out organization, how do we manage it? And the answer to that comes from the procurement mission that we have at the group level or corporate level, where sustainability is one of the 3 foundational pillars of our mission. So at any point of time, whenever any of our colleagues from procurement looks at our mission, our departmental mission, our functional mission, they see sustainability as one of the activities, one of the commitments, one of the deliverables that we have to engage in. So sustainability for them is no longer an alien concept, an alien topic, which is typically executed or led by a different organization, a different department at a different focus area. Sustainability within procurement is very much embedded along with top line and bottom line impact, which are, let's say, the traditional focus areas of procurement. Now, since we are a global organization, we have presence in more than 100, 115 plus countries. It's also important to understand how the department or the organization is structured. Now, we have a complex matrix organization structure to address the scope and the scale of operations that we have, which means there are 11 semi-autonomous, independent, you can say, procurement teams, which are operating at region level, at category levels, etc., etc. Now, to make sure that each of these 11 procurement organizations or sub-organizations are implementing sustainability initiatives with equal level of stringency, diligence within their own organization and scope, we have prepared something which we call as a sustainable procurement framework. And this framework helps us ensure that the implementation of any initiative, including the zero carbon project that we are going to talk about in details, is happening in a globally uniform way, irrespective of the region or the category where the actions are happening. So what is this sustainable procurement framework? It starts with a vision, and I'll not go into the details of it in the interest of time. So it basically focuses on collaboration with our suppliers. And collaborate is a key word here because that's what we have adopted in letter and spirit for all our engagements going forward. So we collaborate with our partners to create an inclusive carbon neutral world with where the resources, the ecosystems, and the economic opportunities are inclusive, are preserved for the environment and the people who are working and engaged by us. Now, to make this vision a reality, we have, let's say, a structure around it. And at the foundation of that structure, we have a supplier code of conduct, which is the mother document before any of the engagements begin with our suppliers or partners. And that document lists out the very basic fundamental expectations that we have with our partners, with our suppliers. Now, to make sure that this expectation is executed and implemented, we have several interventions which are implemented across the globe. At a basic level, there are two interventions which are cutting across the theme of environmental, social, and governance, which means the duty of vigilance, which is a supplier audit program, and ISO 6000, which is a implementation of leading practices. These are implemented with select group of suppliers, and they make sure that our suppliers are not only focusing on the bare minimum, the high risk, but also implementing the leading practices across the ESG framework. However, this is not enough. To have an impact which is aligned with our vision, we need to have a much more dedicated, much more ambitious engagement on specific themes. And that's where we have strategic initiatives that are implemented, starting with the Zero Carbon Project, which is focusing on our on carbon emission reduction, the scope 1 and 2 from our top 1,000 suppliers, to other initiatives which focus on increasing the composition or proportion of green materials in our products, to sustainable packaging, making sure there are no single-use plastics, we are using recycled cardboards, to reach and rush conflict minerals. And when we go to the social side of it, there are initiatives like decent work and social excellence, which focus on going beyond the local legal requirements, which focus on going beyond the normative or the prevalent practices that are implemented. And not just staying at tier 1, because a lot of risk comes from tier 2, tier 3, the lack of visibility that we have. So the social excellence program, which is currently under pilot phase, it goes beyond the tier 1 supply base and tries to understand the tier 2, tier 3 up to tier X, and ensure there is a minimum standard of operations which is implemented with the suppliers beyond that. And all of these initiatives are governed by very strong mechanism of performance evaluation of our supply partners. This makes sure that these initiatives are not only a standalone initiatives, but the performance of our suppliers, which is coming out from these initiatives, is actually feeding in to how the business decisions, supplier selection, supplier evaluation, and the awards, the business award is happening within the organization. So this sustainable procurement framework ensures that we are implementing these initiatives uniformly across the spectrum of the countries and geography along with our suppliers. Now, we have received several acknowledgement, felicitations for the vision and the framework, and it gives us an idea that we are on the right track. However, there are still a lot of questions for which we do not have the answers, and there is a lot that we have to cover, but it does give us a sense that we are definitely on the right track, and we just need to double down our efforts to make sure our supply chains are sustainable. Now, with this context, and why this context is important, because we need to understand the mindset within the organization, and the mindset, governance, the seriousness with which the sustainability topic is addressed within the organization, that has a direct impact on how effective we are in terms of engaging our partners, in terms of leveraging our relationships with them and taking forward our journey. So with this context and with this governance framework supporting us, we now move to the net zero commitment that Schneider Electric has taken of becoming net zero by 2050. Now, it's a long journey that we have, and each of our journey or each phases of this journey has to be defined. There has to be a milestone set. There has to be a monitoring mechanism of how fast, how soon are we addressing these milestones and whether we are moving in the right direction or not. Now, since we are from procurement organization, scope 3 is where we focus on, and scope 3 is typically one of the more complicated topics to solve, as it was also reflected in the survey results that we had in the beginning. Now, it's a long-term journey and we are just getting started. So the first step of this journey is engaging our top 1,000 suppliers and reducing the overall operational emission by 50% by 2025. Now, this is just the first step. It will evolve when we move from 26 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. But staying on and going a little more deeper on the zero carbon project. So what is it? The zero carbon project in very simple terms is the engagement where we ask our suppliers to first quantify the carbon footprint, what's the carbon emissions, at this stage. Second, identify how much is the reduction of the carbon emissions that they can do by 2025 by a midterm plan, likewise. And once they have taken that ambition, they need to implement an action plan to achieve that progress. So zero carbon project, in very simplistic terms, we ask our partners to quantify the carbon emissions, take up a reduction ambition, and implement an action plan to achieve the reduction in their operations. And at this stage, between 21 to 25, we are only talking about scope 1 and scope 2, let's say on a mandatory level. Scope 3 is optional. And you'll see why this is at this stage. One more important thing, in this program, to have the maximum impact possible for our intervention, we are asking the organizations to take the reduction target and quantify their emissions on the full scope of their operations. We are not asking them to apportion their emissions to the sale, which is happening to Schneider Electric. We are asking them to take the quantification, do the quantification and take the emission reduction for the full scope of the operations of their organization. But then, before we began the program, there were certain key questions which were facing us. First of all, how do we select the right kind of supplier? How do we engage with those suppliers? They are spread across, and how do we communicate with them? Is it going to be simple email, one by one, 1,000 suppliers, which means every message will have to be multiplied by 1,000 times. So how do we structure the communication around that? And also, at what stage are our suppliers in terms of maturity on this topic, whether they understand, whether they are advanced, whether they know how to do the quantification, setting the ambition, etc., etc. So these were some of the key questions that we were facing before the launch of the program. And we'll go one by one, and I'll try to share what experience, what lessons we learned, how we moved in this journey. So the very first thing was on supplier selection. So we leveraged on the work done by our corporate environment team. Schneider Electric has been reporting its carbon footprint for scope 3 for quite some time. But these scope 3 estimations were based on the theoretical emission factors. It's not something which is on primary data. Almost all the companies do it in this standard manner. So we looked at the different categories or different commodities that we purchase, and we looked at and we deep dive into how much is the contribution of individual category into the carbon emission, thereby identifying which categories are contributing more, which categories are contributing less to the scope 3 carbon emission. So that was the first level of review that we did. Another deep dive that we did was we reviewed how or what was the proportion of individual suppliers' emission in that category. So if one category has 100 tons of carbon emission and there are 200 suppliers in that category, then based on the spend, how much is the proportion of individual suppliers in that 200? So once we did that analysis, we identified for all the commodities, and of course it was on an indicative basis, who are the suppliers who are high emission, who are the suppliers who are low emission for our supply base. So using this data, we leveraged on our procurement focus. So we included the strategic suppliers, the high emission non-strategic suppliers into this 1,000 number that we selected for participation. Now, just the selection and shortlisting selection was not enough, because that was happening at a centralized level. But each of the suppliers' nomination into the program needed to be validated by their individual buyers, by their individual procurement colleagues who are responsible for the relations. So that meant after we had shortlisted these 1,000 suppliers, and these 1,000 suppliers came from 50 plus countries across the world, they came from more than 60 commodities or categories in procurement, and we reached out to 500 to 600 buyers around the world to get the validation on the names and the selection of suppliers for the program. It was a long drawn process, once, and it did take us some time to have the full validation of this list. Now, once we had this list, once we had this nomination frozen from our side, the next step was engaging the suppliers. Because just because we are a customer and we decided to do something, one fine day, and we ask the supplier to do, that's not how it works. So we had to engage the supplier, we had to explain the topic to them, we had to tell them why we are doing it, and how, what do we expect from them, and how can we help them in this journey. And this last piece was extremely, extremely important on how we can help them in this journey. And here again, the very strong relationship of our procurement colleagues was the foundation of the success that we had. They reached out to the suppliers, they reached out to the partners, they took their questions, they took their clarifications and responded to them. And to support all this discussion, we had created a framework on what is it that Schneider Electric is going to do, how we are going to support our partners in this journey, what kind of hand-holding we are going to give, what kind of experience sharing we are going to give, etc., etc. So using this, let's say, engagement, we were able to get the commitment of these suppliers. But this commitment did not come before we had the top-level engagement as well. So having the supplier-buyer relationship and leveraging on that was one element. But these kind of commitments, which are happening at organization level, do not come if the top-level commitment is not there. So last year, in the month of April, we organized the global launch of the Zero Carbon Project. And it was led from Schneider's side by the executive leadership of Schneider, including our chairman and CEO, Jean-Pascal Recroix, our chief strategy and supply chain officer, our chief sustainability officer, our chief procurement officer, to explain the context of the program, why we are doing it. And we invited the executive leadership of our suppliers into this discussion. And it was a leader-to-leader discussion, which helped us get the commitment, supported by the collaborative spirit that we had already committed to the suppliers for this program. And yet, all this, it sounds rather simple. It sounds, I would say, it's much easier to talk about it right now, but the execution definitely is a little bit more challenging, than explaining it here today. Now, once we have the supplier selection, once we have the engagement and the commitment of the suppliers, we also need to figure out how are we going to engage and how are we going to communicate with the suppliers. And that's where we leveraged upon the existing tools and platform within the procurement organization. Because this is a program which is embedded into the procurement structure, into the procurement organization, we relied upon the supplier relationship portal that we have within Schneider to reach out, communicate, send letters, send surveys to the suppliers on this particular topic. And that helped us in a way that it kind of normalized the communication on this particular topic within our supplier fraternity. Since they are used to receiving procurement related communication from this channel, this was just one another channel, and they did not have to, let's say, get used to a new channel of communication, getting used to, you know, the interface. And so it was an organic integration of the procurement system that we have in the organization. So once these three things were kind of addressed, were kind of resolved, we were faced with another question that we will support our partners, we will handhold our partners in this journey. But in order to do that effectively, we need to understand where they are in their carbon maturity journey, whether they are advanced, they have already done, they already have the targets, commitments, and they are working towards it, or they are at the early stages of this journey. So in order to gauge this sense, we rolled out a carbon maturity survey. Again, we leveraged the supplier relationship portal, which we have within procurement, to gather this feedback. And it was interesting because the feedback gave us the result that almost 70 to 75% of our partners were new to the topic of decarbonization, which meant they had never calculated or quantified their carbon footprint. They were not aware of what is scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. They were not even aware of, how should they respond to the particular request. And another interesting aspect that we noted was 2/3 of our partners, of our top 1,000 participating members, were small and medium scale enterprises. And that added a layer of nuance into it, because the small and medium scale enterprises, they are generally have, let's say, limited capacities or competencies when it comes to topics like sustainability, topics like decarbonization. Not everyone has that. I mean, of course, there are some who are leading, but largely speaking, it's an area of expertise which is not present. Another is when we look at the methods of decarbonization, the approaches, the actions, the levers that can be implemented. Most of them are customized to the large industrial groups. They are suited to a big industrial house with multi-country, multi-facility setup, and they are not right-sized or right-priced for an SME kind of organization. And also, another challenge that we faced was the very strong perception that decarbonization, climate action, sustainability, these are the topics which often are associated with increasing cost, expense that we have to incur. And that was also a huge psychological roadblock, which was hindering, let's say, or which was a strong apprehension with our partners. Now, once we knew that these were the challenges, we came up with a supplier support framework. Now, what is this framework? It basically meant that we handholded our suppliers and took them through the journey of starting their decarbonization, their carbon footprinting, and then sharing with them at every step of it what to do, how to do, what are the resources to be used, and then guiding them with one-to-one coaching, one-to-one handholding and support throughout this process. Now, the supply support framework that we deployed had 4 quadrants. The first quadrant was capacity building and training. And in total, we conducted more than 130 live training sessions for our partners globally of different kinds, in groups, one-to-one hand-holding, doubt clarifications, peer-to-peer learning sessions where we called in some of the leading organizations to share their expertise and encourage and inspire other partners to follow that path. To even, so if you look at the entire scope of capacity building exercise we did, we started off with a 3-hour session. So there were 8 3-hour sessions conducted in the beginning, giving them the end-to-end picture of what is decarbonization, sharing what Schneider Electric has done, because sharing our example was extremely crucial. Schneider Electric in the last 4 years had reduced our scope 1 and scope 2 by more than 50%, almost close to 59%. So sharing our example of what was done in our factories, what was done in our offices, in our distribution centers was extremely crucial in giving them a confidence that we know what we are talking about. We've undertaken this journey, and when we are talking about decarbonization, it's not coming out of thin air. So that gave us a lot of credibility, sharing our own expertise. Apart from this end-to-end decarbonization training, where we also pulled in experts from different departments of Schneider Electric. So we got almost 17 experts from different departments, different competencies within Schneider Electric to contribute to these 3-hour sessions, 8 sessions that we conducted. And they were also split across the maturity. There were different sessions for mature suppliers, different sessions for early starters, etc., etc. But that was not enough. It helped the suppliers in getting the big picture, but still they were hesitant as to what is the first step that they have to take. So we again created a very customized specific roadmap, and that's the image that you see on the right-hand side top. We created a specific roadmap of what actions supplier has to undertake, and we took them one by one through each of these steps of what could be done, how it can be done, etc., etc. In terms of how to calculate the carbon footprint, we took detailed sessions giving them the information on explaining what is scope 1, what is scope 2, which are the departments from where you will get the data, how do you do the calculation, what are the emission factors. So all of this was explained. We recorded the demos, we created templates and shared with them to execute it within their own organization. And again, we did this in Mandarin, we did this in English. So it was a combination of all the actions which were implemented within Schneider, the lessons, the knowledge we had of sharing it in a very transparent manner with our partners, with our suppliers. And all these trainings and sessions were done using MS Teams. I mean, we did not go for, let's say, any high-end, I would say, mechanism for conducting these. In addition to these trainings, we also relied extensively. So we got a dedicated and exclusive web portal developed for our suppliers to learn from. So all these trainings that we conducted were hosted on these trainings, and the exclusive access was given to our partners who are participating in the Zero Carbon project. We also developed subsequently digital calculator for the carbon emissions. So there the suppliers know they don't need to do the calculation manually. They just need to enter the data, the usage data of the energy sources, and the calculator gives them automatically what's the carbon emission that they have. So we also provide them a lot of updated thought leadership, premium content, etc., etc., to make sure that they are familiar, they have the support system at their fingertips whenever they need it. They don't have to depend on person-specific intervention. They don't have to wait for Schneider Electric to come to them, help them, and guide them on how to do things. Of course, we are available, whenever our partners require, but this was a very strong support mechanism for our partners. We are also, in fact, it's an ongoing journey for us. We are in the phase of developing advanced digital tools, which will help us, help our partners in taking their journey forward on decarbonization. So that was on the digital support, self-help that we focused on. So that also gave us a very strong impetus, a very strong focus of our partners. The third focus area of our supplier support framework was giving the knowledge, giving the let's say learnings that we had within Schneider. And that's where we leveraged on the various centers of expertise, different topics, different departments. We identified people and made sure our suppliers, whenever they have questions, whenever they have any clarification, we give them the right expert to clarify their doubts, to clarify their confusions. We also have expertise within the procurement department to address these, and we also leverage on our colleagues to get this additional insight. We called our suppliers also to our factories, showed them how we have implemented things, what are the initiatives we've done, and how we have, let's say, benefited by implementing various actions within our own factories, DCs, etc. So they could touch and feel, and they could get a sense of how the transition, how the transformation is achieved. And finally, the fourth quadrant was we did not want it to limit, just within Schneider Electric when it comes to the support system, which can be made available to our partners. So we reached out to non-Schneider experts. We took the membership of CDP and we made it available to our 500 suppliers, not all 1,000, but 500, so that they can leverage from the world-class training resources, helplines. The tele helpline is extremely useful of CDP to clarify their doubts and enhance their exposure or lessons on this journey. We also explored country-specific engagements. So we identified the potential and worked with, so this is an instance from Singapore, where we worked with one of the government departments to create a mentorship package for the SMEs, and the government of Singapore with the concerned department, they approve, they subsidize so that it can be taken to the suppliers in a more effective manner. And we're also constantly challenging ourselves to make sure we are we can offer as much support to our partners. We are currently in discussion with couple of financial institutions so that our partners can benefit from supply chain finance when it comes to the sustainability topic. Now, the result of all this engagement, and it was an intensive engagement that was executed by our teams, was, as of today, we have 1,016 active participants, active suppliers who are engaged in strong decarbonization. Compared to the situation last year in the beginning of the program, where almost more than 70-75% of the suppliers said we don't know what decarbonization is, we haven't heard of it before. We have more than 90% of our suppliers who've now quantified and calculated their carbon footprint and reported to us. And thanks to the various initiatives and the engagements that are happening, our suppliers are also reporting almost 8% of the carbon emissions, based on the 2021 data, which has been reported till date. So this is one of the very strong engagement modalities that we put in place to make sure we handhold our suppliers and we take them to the next step in the decarbonization journey. But this was not enough, because all this helped us in addressing the first phase of the program, which was quantification, which was identifying how much is the emission I have. And when we move to the second stage of the program, or let's say the center of gravity moves from quantification to the second stage of setting the ambition, we were again faced with the similar questions, because a lot of our partners are new. Now with this intensive engagement, they are familiar with the first phase. The second phase is again a new journey for them. And to again provide them with the equal amount of engagement, collaboration, and support, we did the analysis, looking at the supplier partners we have, what are the levers of decarbonization which can be used by them. So what you see on the on the screen are various levers of decarbonization, including efficiency, electrification, on-site renewables, off-site renewables, additional levers, which can be used by our partners. So all these levers combined together will drive the emission reduction for any organization. I mean, when we talk about efficiency, there are several actions which can be taken within efficiency. When it's about electrification, there are different kinds of interventions which can be done. When it's about on-site renewables, off-site renewables, there are again plethora of instruments, mechanisms which can be implemented. So we made all those action plan, roadmap, levers available to our suppliers, and not just made available to them, but rather we created a mechanism where we engaged with our suppliers and asked them to look at all the levers and all the actions that we had created in the acceleration plan. So we call it as the decarbonization acceleration plan. And we also, with support of our colleagues and some of the experts within the organization, we created various diagnostic tools. We created various low-hanging energy efficiency checklists, which does not require any external engagement for the supplier. So we were able to hand out a lot of tools, lot of templates, which they could simply take and use it, in their organization to identify the initial steps for decarbonizing their journey. The low-hanging efficiency checklist gave them a series of recommendations and said, okay, check within your organization. If you are using compressors, what's the bar at which the compressor is, and what's the bar of pressure that the machines are using. And if the difference is too much, try to optimize that. So like that, there were several initiatives, several actions which were listed out in a self-assessment format and sent out to our partners so that they can leverage all these low-hanging fruits and embark upon that. Now, we also realized that it's not only this is not the only way by which our partners will get all the information. There are other actions, there are other levers as well for which they need to reach out to, let's say, experts. To support that, we created this I Accelerate Zero Carbon Day workshop. And in this workshop, we identified various subject matter experts. So we did the pilot with the EMEA region, the India, Middle East, Africa region, and the East Asia, Japan region of our organization. We identified internal plans where we can take our partners, expose them, make them meet the experts and learn how we executed ourselves. We identified the subject matter experts, who were knowledgeable on the topic of decarbonization, come and explain the various solutions to our partners, such as how can digitalization help the companies, even very basic operations to let's say advanced operations. How can digitalization help you in becoming more energy efficient? How can energy audits support your efficiency journey? How do you look at end-to-end decarbonization? We even got the experts from microgrid for supporting not only on the traditional capex model, because that was the apprehension that it's all cost intensive. We worked out with our colleagues and let's say also explained the opex model, where as a company you don't have to book any investment in your books. It's taken up by a third-party developer and you only pay for the energy as you consume. Likewise, we also identified non-Schneider service companies who provide these services solutions to the supplier. So we called everybody into one place. We explained all the solutions, the ways, the knowledge, the technicalities of things, and we allowed the partners to interact with the service providers and create their own decarbonization work plan. We also invited partners to do the experience sharing, and we called in some of our leading partners who had delivered strong decarbonization. And as a result of this entire engagement, what you see on the right hand side, the two graphs, the forecasted reduction that our partners have committed to. Before this exercise in the EMEA region, it was 4% on an average. It jumped to 41% And similarly, in the EAJ region, it was almost close to 8%. It jumped to 27%. So it showed that if we need our partners to move forward in this journey, we have to handhold them. We have to take them through the process. We have to take them through the journey. And we cannot simply afford to have an arm's length distance, send them a survey, and then think, okay, they'll do the rest. It does not work like that. We have to be in the trenches with our partners. We have to talk to them. We have to think like them. We have to find out solutions for the problems and the challenges that they are facing. And all these engagements, and this is not completed yet. So we are continuing to innovate, we are continuing to identify more ways of how we can be more effective in supporting our partners. But I mean, this is, I would say, where we are. And the next step for us is to replicate, to execute, and basically make sure that whatever lessons we've learned are it's carried forward to our partners, to our suppliers, to the stakeholders who are engaging with us on decarbonization. These are some of the images from these events. You can see we had roadshows where people had set up their stalls. These are non-Schneider entities whom we had reached out to, and we asked them, invited them to come and talk to our suppliers about what solution they have, how it can help. There were one-to-one working sessions. There were doubt clarification sessions. Likewise, this is from the EAJ, East Asia Japan region. We had working sessions, experts coming and explaining how things are, clarifying the doubts, etc., etc. So I guess with that, I'll pause here and I'll give back the floor to Florian. I guess the last words from me on this is decarbonization is a journey that we can only undertake if we are there with our partners, supporting them as equal partner. And I guess with that, Florian, I hope the experiences and the lessons were relevant. I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for your insights. Really very, very impressive project, very complex and very ambitious. So I think we've all learned very much so far. Now with the last minutes that are remaining, we are now diving into some of the questions that have been written down. Here also a last invitation to all of the others who have other questions they might want to ask. Now is the chance to do that in the chat window. Maybe I'll just start with one of the first questions about tier X suppliers. So I think the person who asked the question already said that it kind of got answered that you focus on 1,000 tier 1 suppliers, but of course the question still remains, those suppliers still have their own suppliers. And
absolutely,
maybe you can just give one side also how this is
and that's a very valid question, and we have to look at it in a perspective of what's the journey that we're going to take in a situation where 75% of the guys are not knowing what the topic is. How can you progress on this topic? It would not be realistic to expect them to reach out to their tier 2 suppliers or their suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, and get the tier 2 suppliers onboarded for decarbonization. So we look at it as a gradual evolution of the decarbonization program. The 21 to 25 journey, 2021 to 2025 journey is the first step where we are just breaking the ice with top 1,000 partners of tier 1. But when we enter into the second phase, 2026 to 2030, we will be looking at going vertically down across the tiers and also expanding horizontally, going beyond 1,000 suppliers to some additional number. So I agree, without the scope 3, we cannot achieve strong decarbonization, but we also have to look at the perspective of how much is realistic and take it as a gradual journey. It's a marathon, as one of our senior colleagues says, it's a marathon without a finish line. It's not a sprint that we expect that by 25 we'll wrap up the program and we would have changed the world. It's not going to happen. So we need to take that perspective of how we're going to evolve the program and make an effective intervention on ground.
Exactly. Yeah, we can all only do it together, and we have to also count on other companies to to engage and to do their part. And I really liked your focus that you really highlight the perspective of the suppliers and their issues and their challenges, and that you help with them. And one of the questions also focused on that and pointed out that the suppliers working with you and with Schneider Electric have the big opportunity to use your tools that you've presented and work with you on the program, but they of course also have other buying enterprises and have to deal with them, and maybe this other enterprise then has a different approach or different tools, and maybe this makes it even more complicated for the supplier. So maybe, do you have any thoughts on what can be done to make this easier for the suppliers also in a more holistic perspective?
No, absolutely. So we were very mindful of the thought that we should not create a new line of action, a new channel of communication for our partners. And we also realized there are, let's say, several other ways of communicating the same data, the same kind of information, which we may also be gathering, which we may also be asking. So we were extremely cautious in terms of the survey that we created, that we only ask a pointed information that we need for our purpose, the carbon emissions, baseline, base year, etc., etc. And this data does not need to be, if a company has already done it, if they are already reporting it, they don't need to recreate for us. They can simply pick that data and plug it into the communication channel, which they are already familiar with, because the survey, the SSP SRM, the supplier relationship portal that we have, it's an existing communication channel with the partners. So there was no new channel of communication which was created. We leveraged on the existing work that they may have done to make it extremely nimble and less, let's say, effort intensive for them to provide that information to us. Also, in terms of the solutions, and please correct me if I did not get the answer, if I did not get the question right. We do not mandate any partner to mandatorily accept or adopt any solution that we are suggesting, that we are recommending. We are extremely clear that the end result is decarbonization. What we are trying to do is showcase as much as we can, share as much as we can to our partners, both within Schneider, non-Schneider, solutions, services, so that they get the best information and then they can make the informed choice about it. If they feel any of the Schneider suggestions, recommendations are not relevant for their kind of operations, it's something else, we happily encourage them to do what's best for their organization. So there is absolutely, we are completely agnostic from that perspective. We only want the best information, knowledge, solutions, services to be available. But in the end, decision is with the partner, and they are free to make the choices that suits their organization best.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think also in general, as we see more and more alignment also on climate data reporting from international standards and everything, I think this is the direction that we all have to go, that we all try to figure out common key elements, key KPIs that we can all better work together. Yeah, very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe the very last question. Now we have only 2 minutes left. As I already said, or as it's very obvious, it's a very big project that you have there, where you invested a lot of time, a lot of money, and some companies who are in the same position as you, maybe they're not as big as Schneider Electric, and they don't have the same resources to start such a project. And do you have any tips how they could start? How they could have first steps that don't require as much investment, but how they can gradually grow this,
Absolutely, and I think it's important to clarify that it's not the investment. It's not. It's about energy and time and commitment. What's crucial. First thing that any organization needs to have is the commitment of the leadership. In this case, we are extremely lucky that we have commitment from our chairman and CEO, to the chief supply chain officer, to the chief procurement officer, to even the vice president of sustainable procurement. So there is absolute clarity in the executive leadership that this is a business material issue for us, and there is no second thoughts on that. That being said, it's extremely important to have, let's say, right competency or knowledge within the organization. Topics like this, it's extremely important that they are led by people who know, how things can be executed, how the journey unfolds. Because the trick is not to give a standard off the shelf, what's available in the market solution to the partners, but to sit with them, understand their, pain points, and give them extremely easy, nimble, lucid solution, which probably, you need to just pick up basic things from one place, another place, and create a package and give it to them, so that it's very easy and very palatable for them. And that's what exactly we did. We did not push any of the, let's say, complex templates or web portals or, jargons to our partners. We sat very simply, spoke in the terms as, let's say, a shop floor person will speak, identify the departments, what is the data, what are the bills, where will you get from. When you have all of this, simply add up, pick up the emission factor, these are the links of emission factor, do the multiplication, you've done the job. So this simplification is the key to getting the message, because anyways, it's a topic which is complex. If organizations have not started their journey, they would be apprehensive of this topic. And on top of it, if we add jargons, if we add complex templates, which people don't really, understand in the first look, it's the recipe to, scare people away from the topic. So I think get the right support from the leadership, get the right competencies within the organization, and the support of the procurement organization, because really I cannot emphasize this enough. Without the strong support of procurement organization, and when I say procurement organization, I mean the buyers, the commodity managers, at every level of organization, they are the ones who influence the decisions which are taken by the partners, not me, not any other person who's working at a central level. So these three things I think are extremely crucial: top management, support of the procurement organization, and knowledge competency, so that you can innovate, improvise, and give the easiest solution to the partners.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe as with this question, there was also the add-on which software tools there are to help. Actually, the one that I mentioned at first, where you can use the link down below, is actually the one that we're offering. One of the possibilities to make this this problem more efficient, and less resource intensive. And yeah, so we are already over the time. It was very insightful. Thank you very much, Kanishk, and also thank you for everyone who's still with us. And yeah, so next time in 2 weeks, we actually have the last choice event of our year, and it will be a review of the whole year with some more experts from Ørsted, HIP, Green Planet Energy, and BAMIV. And yeah, so if anyone wants to join also in 2 weeks, you are welcome to do so. Now I release you to yeah, hopefully a relaxed afternoon, and thanks again, Kanishk, and yeah, take care.
Thank you so much, Florian, and thank you to all the colleagues and members who joined the session today and had the interaction and an exchange with us. Thank you. Have a good